There's reports that as a 13-year-old, you can put it down. You could put it down on the basketball court. You were dunking at age 13. Yeah. So I need to know if you can confirm that for us.
That is facts.
were these legit nasty dunks, or were these squeakers? What are we talking about
these
here?
were, your power dunks, one hand, two hand, throw it off the backboard, probably cock it back. I was also dunking with my left hand, and I was right-handed, but I wasn't windmilling though. I wasn't.
Okay.
I wasn't going under the legs or anything like that. But I was, dunking in games type. So
that's cool. So now you've been a guy that was a multi-sport player. So it says here, basketball, soccer, volleyball. How are they playing all of those sports?
Volleyball. Hold up. You don't bury the lead here. I know. I want to know what kind of. What are you? Are you a setter, outside hitter? I know you're not a libero.
My coach, the coach I had in middle school, my gym teacher, he's literally the coach for all sports. So he got all his basketball players playing every sport. So I had no choice.
When did the football bug hit you?
I started playing football actually in the 5th grade. Again, both of my brothers played basketball, so I always grew up playing basketball. Then one day I was literally at the court and I seen a few guys tackling each other, hitting each other pretty hard and not complaining about it. Guys just laughing, having a good time. Okay, let me get into it. Then after that, I fell in love with the game ever since.
So in thinking about that, because you had such a multi-sport background, how did those other sports help you when it came to being a football player?
For example, soccer, that was the first sport I ever played, and even though I didn't play for too long, I feel like it just helped because having that footwork and always being a big kid, but I was always a big kid that could run, had good feet, I was always a athletic guy, and I feel like that kind of made it easy to transition on the football field, because really when I started playing, I was playing O-line was the first sport, the first position I played because of my size, but then after I was playing fullback, I played linebacker, stand-up defensive end, all over the D-line. I was on all special teams and stuff, so really, I didn't really get down to it until I probably say going through high school, 10th, 11th grade, or where I started playing D-line. Even then, I played some running back still.
We need to talk about where you grew up, because growing up in Canada, I'm curious, how was the football growing up there, and how, you talked about how you got started in it, but I got to believe that there was a lot of things pointing in other directions other than football.
I was born and raised in Ottawa, Canada. I had 2 older brothers and my parents, but the 4 of them, they were born and raised in Jamaica. So, just growing up, football, it was coming up, but just not at the level that was being played, in America. So, a lot in terms of, there wasn't that many. There's very few guys from Canada, especially where my hometown was, that had an opportunity that got the opportunity to play Division I football. So, it was more so me just playing it with my friends, having that love for it. But then, when you cross over to the border, you kind of see just the amount that's invested into the sport. Not from a financial standpoint, just, the coach and the caliber players. And, you cross over the border, there's more guys at my build as opposed to back home. I kind of always stood out.
So in thinking about that, you elected to go to Oklahoma. Oklahoma has a storied tradition of producing pros. They've had talented defensive linemen. What did you learn from your time at Oklahoma that will help you succeed in the National Football League?
I feel like, Oklahoma definitely prepared me just to be mentally tough. And I'm not saying I lacked that as a kid, but I was always a kid that showed. I was a high effort kind of kid. I wanted to be that big guy that sold out every play, that ran full speed. I always felt like keep up with the skilled players, even if I couldn't. And I feel like the biggest transition for me was just because of being kind of behind the 8 ball. Just being not having the level of coaching that I got at Oklahoma, and then just kind of understanding just more to it than being a high effort guy. You got to be able to play at a high level within the confines of the system. Technique, understanding hand placement, stuff like that. Just kind of being more so a student of the game as opposed to just being just an athlete.
I want to ask you a scouting question. We come from the scouting background, so put your scouting hat on for a second here. You got your hat on. You're ready to go. All right. You got a chance to watch the first overall pick last year as a teammate there with Kyler Murray. Now you look this year. Everybody assumes Joe Burrow is going to be the first overall pick. You guys got a chance to play against him in the playoffs this year. How would you compare those two guys?
Kyler Murray and Joe Burrow?
Yeah.
Again, both players, you know, are extremely, you know, exciting to watch. You know, first started with Kyler Murray. You know, the stuff that he's able to do with his feet. You know, I feel like, you know, you gotta appreciate that. And again, he's a playmaker. You know, a guy that, you know, he kind of, you know, he puts his head down and just works, just wants to compete, doesn't like losing. And then, just, you know, again, being somebody who had the opportunity to compete against Joe Burrow, you know, it's no coincidence that he's put himself in the position he is now. And, you know, even playing against him, he's done some stuff that is really impressive. And again, it kind of adds to that. It's one thing to see it, you know, when you're watching it on film or watching it, you know, as a spectator. But when you're going up against it, you know, you definitely, you know, you have even more.
What was the difference? What was the difference seeing it live and in person?
Again, you know, I feel like he's a very tough guy. You know, and he's a lot faster than I feel like a lot of people give him credit for. And, you know, again, a facilitator, just knows how to get the ball in, you know, his guys' hands, you know, no matter what the situation is. You know, usually, you know, some guys are comfortable in the pocket, not as comfortable once they get out, and then you come across guys that more comfortable out of pocket, you know, not really as comfortable in the pocket. Then you come across, you know, those few guys that kind of able to do both. So
I want to ask you one more thing, Buck, and I'll let you jump in here. Did he talk at all? I mean, because he was in the zone against you guys, the way he was putting up numbers. Was he whispering to you guys at all back there, or was he quiet?
Not that I know of him, but again, like also when I'm in the game, like I kind of lock in as well. I don't really talk trash. I kind of just put my head down and work. So I'm not. But from what I recall, I don't remember him saying too much as part of, you know, apart from like him calling the offense or telling guys what they needed to do, I guess.
So you guys had a new quarterback this year, came in from Alabama, Jalen Hurts.
Yes, sir.
What did he add to your team from a leadership standpoint, from a playing standpoint?
Man, you know, I really got a lot of appreciation for Jalen, not just as a football player, but as a person. I don't feel like it was hard for guys to trust him. Very team-oriented guy. Like even the funny thing that really kind of jumped off the tape for me is just when he was talking with the guys, it was never ever like about him, even the goals and the accolades that he had. Like I don't think he mentioned not one time of a personal goal that he had for himself, but it was all more so what he wanted us to accomplish as a team, as a unit. Like the expectation he had for us was so high, but I respected and understood because the expectation he had for himself was even higher. So, you know, that was one thing that I really appreciated. And on top of that, you know, great friend, genuine, you know, a real stand-up guy. And, you know, the guy really, I call him like an old man because he's just
he got a lot of life experience.
50-year-old man trapped in like a 21-year-old body, but, you know, very wise guy, and, you know, just a good, overall good person to be around.
Well, it's been great to get to know you and visit with you. Best of luck this week. Have a great week.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
All right, last year at this time, we were having the will he or won't he discussion about Steve Keim and the Arizona Cardinals. Will he go back-to-back quarterbacks? We hadn't seen that before. Josh Rosen, I believe, was a 10th overall pick, and we assumed that was their quarterback of the future. They have the number 1 overall pick. We assumed it was going to be Nick Bosa. This time of year, the rumors started. I believe it was our buddy Peter Schrager who was the first one to sniff this one out, that they might go Kyler Murray here with the first overall pick. Indeed, that's what ended up happening. Steve Keim doubles up on quarterback and ended up being the right move, the way we saw Kyler Murray emerge as a playmaker in that offense. But you had a chance to catch up with the Arizona Cardinals general manager at the Combine, and here's your conversation.
How you doing? How's everything?
Doing good, man. Excited to be here.
Hey, look, it's an exciting time in Arizona because you guys have a young, dynamic quarterback in Kyler Murray that everyone is excited about.
Murray setting up, throws a deep ball right side, got a receiver, Kirk, touchdown!
The great throw by the mighty Kyler Murray.
Just talk about the shift in the league with these athletic quarterbacks kind of taking over the game.
You know, the ability to extend plays with your feet and all those different things that they can do from a mobility standpoint, it's changing the game. It's bringing a lot more of the college concepts, I think, to the NFL. And you've shown the ability to keep these guys healthy, which I know was the biggest concern in the past. But you also have guys that are coming along that, you know, maybe you and I didn't scout back in the day, that these guys not only can beat you with their feet, but they can beat you with their arm. You know, back in those days, there were guys that could run and could throw, but they didn't have the natural accuracy and the ball placement that these guys have. I mean, when you look at guys like Kyler, you know, what he can do with his feet, and then how he can beat you with his arm. I mean, really, again, it puts so much stress on defenses.
So in terms of like that, because you've been fortunate to build a team now with Kyler, an athletic playmaker, you built it with Carson Palmer. What are the differences when you have when you're building a team where you have a mobile player and you have a traditional thrower that just kind of likes to hang in the pocket? Do you have to build a team differently?
Yeah, I mean, I think you do. You know, a number of things. I mean, just obviously there's some schematical things that the way you have to approach it that are a little different, especially with a guy that's got to be in the gun. You know, the play action game is a little different, the concepts there. But more than anything, to me, it's having a mobile quarterback for the first time it's just fun, because there's so many different things you can do, so many possibilities, and really you just got to put playmakers around them. And your offensive linemen do have to be a little more athletic, and they have to be a little better in space. But those are fun problems to have. Again, it's trying to find those type of players.
So it's funny. So DJ and I have had this theory that when you have a mobile playmaker, an athletic quarterback, that you basically want to surround him with a track team.
Christian Kirk again runs by the defender.
Drake has the legs, he can fly.
Do you see that trend, the need to have more explosive playmakers around the guy that can extend plays and kind of push the ball down the field?
I don't think there's any doubt, because again, that quarterback brings so much attention to himself that you're getting more isolated mismatches. You're getting more one-on-one situations on the perimeter, or you're getting a back in the backfield like a Kenyon Drake this past year, who can do so many different things schematically for you. Can run the football, can run that stretch, and can also catch the ball to the backfield with effectiveness.
So it's funny you talked about Kenyon Drake, because this kind of goes along with another thing that we've talked about, these hybrid players, these positionless football, where you expect guys to have a variety of skills in the toolbox. Do you believe the game is going to a point where you need to have guys that can do more than just one skill set? They got to play multiple positions and do a variety of different things.
I don't think there's any question. And then obviously to be able to do those different things and to have positional flex, you bring more value. But if you look at the defense, you know, to have an inside player that can play inside, outside as a defensive lineman, or a linebacker that can play all three downs and cover, or in the secondary, a safety that can cover in the slot and play the post. Again, all those different things are things that are necessary in today's day and age, because you're playing in so much space. You know, those days, again, back in our scouting days that I like to refer to, that two-down Mike linebacker doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And if he does, you're in trouble.
He is in trouble.
How you doing? Cliff Kingsbury, nice to meet you.
You've had to undergo a transition of being a general manager for a first-time head coach who's making a transition from college to pro. When you have a guy like Cliff Kingsbury who is making that transition, how do you best support him as a general manager?
You know, I think just through experiences that I've had and really where we failed. You know, I think sometimes in any business, it's more important to learn from your mistakes and to identify what you did wrong, not so much of what you did right, so you don't make those mistakes the second time. And I think really that's what I can do for Cliff, is try to lend that hand of, hey, here are some things that we did in the past that didn't work out. Here are the things that we need to avoid moving forward. And it's been fun for me because he's such a sharp guy, and he's so talented, in my opinion, that his ability to adapt the NFL game has been pretty fast.
Hey, nice shot. We're getting it back. Let's go win it, all right?
When you're thinking about blending some college stuff with pro stuff, does it change the kind of players that you want to bring into the program?
Yeah, I mean, I think it does. I mean, I think you want to be able to cater to those guys' strengths, and you want to be able to give your coaches the kind of players that they feel comfortable with, that they can succeed in their offense. But it's such a nice deal in our situation to have, you know, a guy like Cliff who can bring those college concepts. Yet at the same time, we have a number of people with a lot of pro experience that can sort of step in and say, hey, listen, I don't know if this is going to work because they're going to bring this blitz or they're going to do these different things to us defensively. So really there's a checks and balances sort of set up for us, which is, to me, works extremely well, because you have the creativity side, yet at the same time you go back to the basics and you have the right fundamentals that are in place to be able to protect.
Touchdown! How did Larry Fitzgerald catch that football?
That guy you have playing wide receiver, who's been playing at a high level for a long time, Larry Fitzgerald, is a very, very special player. As he ages out and you look at the wide receiver position, what are some of the things that he has done that separates him from others at the position?
Well, I mean, I just think it's being the consummate pro every day, and that's what I think surprised Cliff the most, is when he first came in, here you're coaching a living legend, but also seeing that on a Wednesday, the guy's laying out and diving for footballs, like he's a free agent trying to make the team. And that's what separates the great ones. I mean, you and I have been around a lot of good players in our careers, and really the difference between the good and the great and the special are the intangibles, the work ethic, the things that they do that people don't see every day. And that's what Larry Fitzgerald is.
Because you've been around in that big chair for a long time, you've seen the trends and the ebbs and flows of the league. How has football changed from a philosophical standpoint in terms of building a team to win in today's game?
Well, I mean, I think that the biggest challenges are, as we know, is this is always an inexact science, whether it's free agency, the draft. I mean, we're taking chances on players in the first round, and you go back the last 10 years, and analytics tell you that only 47% of NFL players have success rates that are drafted in the first round. And that's insane because those are the guys with the bells and whistles.
Yes.
And where did you miss? You missed on the heart and the mind, the two hardest things to read as a scout. Same thing with free agency. You go out and people spend big money on these guys that are available. Well, a lot of times that's fool's gold. So, it's so hard to build a team because you can't just select good football players. You got to have the right chemistry to be successful.
And talking about that, because you kind of brought up the analytics and how you kind of examine the heart and the mind. When you're scouting players, and we're this part of the process, like we have the film, we have the workouts, how do you know which guy's the right guy to be a Cardinal?
That's a great question. It comes down to this process, really. It gets to know the person. You can watch all you want on tape, and I say a lot to our scouts that we go out in the fall and we fall in love with players, and in the springtime we confuse ourselves because now we worry about how big his hand was and how high he jumped, when in reality at 1 o'clock on Sunday we're not running 3 cones. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, it comes down, can he play football? Is he productive at a high level? And can he learn and process the information the way we want him to? And I think that, getting to know the person, how much he loves the game, his passion, that's what it's come down to. And that's where we've missed over the years.
So we have a lot of aspiring scouts that listen to the podcast. And what would be the one nugget that you would pass on to someone who wanted to get into business? Either something that they need to know, something they need to be convicted about. What would you tell them? What would you pass on to them?
I think it's that, as you know, in our business, it's sort of still got that old school feel where people share a lot of information, and sometimes people just listen to what the streets are saying in terms of a guy gets some buzz about him and people like him and they push him up the draft boards. I think it's always going back to your gut instincts and trusting what you see. Instead of using your ears, use your eyes and trust your instincts, believe in what you say, do the work, put it in, and at the end of the day, make sure that you're selecting guys who absolutely love the game.
Okay, then to that point, what did someone teach a young Steve Keim when he was in the business about scouting that really has helped you kind of move your way up the charts?
You know what? I'll never forget this. A long time ago, Rod Graves, my former boss, who I'm still very close to, taught me a lesson as a young aspiring scout, who was full of energy and sort of probably felt like I had all the answers when I didn't. And I'll never forget, he sat me down one day and he humbled me. He said, Steve, there's going to be a lot of people that you come in contact through this position and rising through the ranks and becoming a director, and I think you're going to be a GM one day. But when you're managing people, you got to realize there is a number of people that don't have the natural talent you do. So instead of being worried about you and complaining about things, make them better. Take them to the highest level that they can achieve. And that was humbling because I sort of understood where he was coming from. It's easy to complain. Be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Okay, so I got to let you go with picking your brain about the best player. Like, we all have our favorites from the road, like the best player that you've ever scouted, that you put a big grade on, that you were willing to just stand and say, this guy's going to make it and make it at a high level. And then he actually panned out and made it.
There's a number of those late round guys that I think we all feel like we hit on over the years. I think probably the one guy that I had conviction on that maybe didn't run and test well here that I just stuck to my gut was Anquan Bolden. I don't know if you remember, he ran 4.72.
Oh, yeah.
The tape said one thing. He was sudden in and out of his routes. He's big, physical, attacked the football, but he ran slow. And in those days, we're saying, you can't play if you run 4.72 wide receiver.
Yeah.
And obviously history tells us that Anquan Bolden could play.
Well, look, man, this has been great. A lot of insight, a lot of nuggets. Best of luck to you during this process. We look forward to seeing who you guys pick on draft day.
Appreciate you.
Now, Buck, we've known Steve Keim for a very long time, and I feel like last year was the right call. Now he's got to back it up with another big-time decision in this draft.
He does have to back it up, and I think the thing that is interesting for Keim is how do you continue to build this team around now a young quarterback? You have one style of quarterback in Josh Rosen. Then you got a new offense under your head coach, Cliff Kingsbury. what are the supporting pieces? Do you need more playmakers on the outside? Do you need to beef up the offensive line? The one thing we know, his quarterback has some special traits to him. He got some special stuff, some secret sauce that you want to tap into. Can they get him enough so he can really make a huge jump from year 1 to year 2 down in the desert?
No doubt, big challenge ahead of them. That's a division that is absolutely stockpiled right now when you look at where the Seahawks are. Obviously, the Rams being in the Super Bowl recently, the 49ers in the Super Bowl last year. It's a big hill to climb there for the Arizona Cardinals, but they've got the right trigger man. Can they now go out and give them some help? So that'll be fun to watch. From one quarterback to another, Buck, it's now time for QB Pro comparisons presented by Intuit QuickBooks, official sponsor of the NFL. And we're looking at Tua Tagovailoa from Alabama, and the best comp for him NFL-wise is who?
Man, it's tough because I'm going to give you 2 comps, actually, because Tua Tagovailoa is a mix of Russell Wilson and Drew Brees. The Russell Wilson part comes from the things that you don't necessarily see on the field. The leadership ability, the intangible qualities, the way that he galvanizes a group and gets them to go in the right direction. When you talk to the Alabama staff and his teammates, they just talk about what a dynamic leader he is and how humble he is and how it just kind of works in that locker room. But then when we turn on the game tape, I see a left-handed version of Drew Brees. I see a guy that is explosive in terms of the way the ball jumps from his hands. He is quick, rhythm. He's very decisive, does a great job of painting the corners when it comes to hitting the strike zone, does a great job of anticipating throws. And the big thing, the big jump from playing college to being a successful quarterback in the National Football League is, can you throw with touch, timing, and anticipation? Check, check, check. When it comes to Tua, he is a terrific playmaker from the pocket. And then you add the athleticism. If he's able to return to full health, you get the best of both worlds. Who wouldn't want a guy that can give you some of that Russell Wilson ability with some of that Drew Brees pocket passing prowess? I would love it. I love Tua Tagovailoa as a prospect.
I like those comps. I'm going to go to one of your former teammates who we had a chance to visit with, and that's Mark Brunell. Obviously, you have the left-handed factor, but I thought Brunell was very urgent with the way he operated and some of the same things you're describing about your comps. Just very, very quick feet. He can escape. He can make plays with his legs, but even when he does escape, he's still looking to throw the ball down the field and just had a little whip to him, a little snap to him. I keep coming back to that word urgency. That's the word that I use when I describe Tua Tagovailoa. He's got twitch in his feet. He's got twitch in his release, and you see him work mentally through things very quickly. So that, to me, Mark Brunell would be my comparison.